So we started our mission discovery out on Launch Pad 39A on the early morning hours of April the 5th. And before we go out to the launch pad, we had to get into our pressure suits. And you see us here in the suit-up room of the Operations and Checkout building at the Kennedy Space Center. And we put the suits on and we pressure check them to make sure they're good and tight and have good integrity. And then we walked out. And I think there's some audio. And Naoko, our Japanese astronaut, was very, very popular, and lots of people were out wishing her well. And this is a view from down on the top of the launch pad, looking down at the crew as we showed up. This is a shot of from the flight deck of Dottie getting strapped in. She's ready to go. And after 3 hours on our back, and it was about 2 minutes to launch here, and I'll just let the audio. If you could turn the audio up, please.
Start. 300. Auto, and we are going on the tower. 3 for 7 seconds. There's the rule. LVL 8. LVL 8, next. Houston, Discovery, roll program. Wow. Hello, Discovery. Oh.
It's quite a ride. 7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. It accelerated this vehicle from 0 to 17,500 miles an hour in just a little over 8 minutes. Just after about 2 minutes, the solid rocket boosters burn out and they separate. Creates a loud noise inside the cabin. And then the ride goes from one that's fairly rough down to a very smooth electric train feel. And you'll see here the boosters coming off in just a second. There's booster separation. And this is a view from the shuttle, from the booster cameras of the shuttle continuing on the way. We had great light. We hit sunrise at about Mach 7 on the way uphill. And these are some of the clouds that were left from our solid rocket booster plume afterwards.
And as soon as the main engines cut off, Rick and I were quick to get out of our seats and take some imagery of the external tank as it separates. And also Rick and Naoko were quick at work opening the payload bay doors so we could turn our rocketing vehicle into an orbiting vehicle. On flight day 2, we do the standard inspection with the shuttle robotic arm attached to the orbiter boom sensor system. And this is a shot of Dottie flying the shuttle arm, attaching to the boom sensor system. We use the sensors at the tip of the boom to image the wing leading edge. And we downlink that data to the ground. And during the trajectories, the camera looks overhead, so we take an opportunity to wave to our friends on Earth. And then when the inspection is done, we put the boom back on the payload bay sill. We also check out the spacewalking suits, the EMUs, and that's a shot of Rick doing that, so flight day 2 is very busy.
For rendezvousing with the station, you see those M&Ms flying back, and that's because this burn you'll see in the next part, that was this shuttle burning and how the station guys see it. But back on the flight deck, we all had a job to do, and Stephanie will be here shooting the laser gun at the station to see how fast we're approaching. And Dex was the driver. This is a view from the station guys taking a picture of the shuttle as we come up and do the rendezvous pitch maneuver, it's called. We flip backwards so that they can take photos of our belly. But it's a beautiful shot. And here's Dex driving, so we'll listen to the big crash he causes here at the end.
Half over that. 2 inches.
Easy
Capture. Very nice.
Station.
Houston and station. Capture confirmed.
No flashing lights.
Station's in free drift.
Awesome.
Discovery copies free drift.
Close that TA quiet before we go by.
Roger, Houston.
Flight control power's off.
Nice job, Dex.
Free drift confirmed. Discovery arriving.
The real work begins, and we open the hatch and greet our fellow crewmates. And you'll notice you'll hear several different languages spoken here in this little segment.
How you doing?
Great to see you. Great to see you.
Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa.
Banzai.
We can't quite float through because we have to take some stuff off. And once we've cleared the hatch, we come in, we have a big party, lots of hugging, lots of handshaking, and we shortly thereafter get down to business.
So the first part of business was to have Stephanie fly the big arm on station and pick up the multi-purpose logistics module Leonardo out of our payload bay. And here Naoko is at the controls. And then we berthed the MPLM to the station and got ready to open the hatches. So you can see how clean it is before we open those hatches. And then began the big transfer. We brought up over 6 tons of goods of all different shapes and sizes. Some things are easier to move as a mass with your hands, and some things are easier to move between your legs. So here's Naoko getting buried into all those bags, and Oleg Kotov, the commander of the International Space Station. And the great thing about space is that you can get into spaces you can't get to on Earth.
We also did 3 spacewalks on the mission, and so one of Rick and Clay's favorite parts of the mission was getting to put these masks on and wear them for about an hour at a time. This was to purge the nitrogen out of their bloodstream, much like scuba diving, to make sure when they went out of the airlock they didn't get the bends. Here's Tracy Caldwell and Dottie and I working to get the guys suited up and get them into the crew lock. It's a real tight space for them there. You can see putting 2 spacewalkers in is a tight fit.
Here I am egressing the airlock, and the first thing we had to do was head down to the payload bay. The main task of the EVA was to replace the ammonia tank on board the space station. Of course, under the watchful eye of Dottie, who talked us through all these different tasks. As Clay and I in the payload bay, we're actually removing a new ammonia tank from the payload bay. We're handing it off to Jim and Dottie, who are flying the arm. And we're going to take that new ammonia tank and store it over on the space station temporarily. Here's Jim and Stephanie flying the arm for the on the space station arm. So basically, Clay Anderson had to lift up this 1,800-pound tank and hold it over his head while Jim and Stephanie came in and grappled it, moved it over to the station, and then the next EVA, we prepared to remove the old ammonia tank from the space station and temp stow it. We slid this CETA cart, which is basically just a work platform. We kind of slid it out of the way, and we got some straps. We got 6 adjustable tethers, if you will, we call them. And we set them up, and we were basically going to tie down this old ammonia tank and temp stow it there while we installed the new one. So here you can see again Jim and Stephanie flying the large robotic arm into position while Clay and I hang out there and get prepared for it. Clay?
Dottie was the quarterback, so she did everything. She told us what to do, and that's what we did. We had a lot of trouble getting this piece to go in, so I'm going to bang it down here with my hand. They have these soft docks, they call it, and it kind of locks it in place so you can turn the bolt. But it didn't work to slam it in. It didn't work to take this pry bar and try to pry it in. And so we tried another tool that looks like a very long extended screwdriver, and that worked even worse than the previous attempt. So you see me trying to do that. So now we get really serious. And the ground called up and said, all right, time for some serious work. Let's get out the hammer. Of course, it's a baby hammer. I think if we add water to it, it might enlarge itself. But we hit it a few times with the hammer. That didn't do any good. But it turns out we had to loosen other bolts to make that one go in. And finally, this is a picture of me driving it in with the PGT. Once it's placed on the station, Rick had to connect the fluid lines that allow it to take in nitrogen and spew out ammonia. So we were very glad that we got it in. Is this still me, I guess? So here we are putting the old tank back on the shuttle. Amazingly enough, we had a little trouble getting it back in for a similar reason as we had getting it out. But fortunately, all that worked well. And as any good toolman will tell you, you put all your stuff back when you're finished with the job. And we came inside to be greeted by MASH, Jim Dutton, and Tracy Caldwell. They're pulling me out of the airlock first here, and those suits weigh, all that stuff weighs about 600-700 pounds. So it's a slow move to get us onto these stands, but that allows us to hang there easily in zero gravity and then be taken out of the suits because we're very hungry, we're very tired, and we want to get cleaned up. But it's a pretty cool ride.
This is TJ, and myself and Naoko were transferring some samples from a freezer on the space station into a freezer on the middeck called Merlin, so we could bring those samples home. And in the next shot, you'll see Suichi and Naoko doing the same thing. They took samples from a freezer on the space station, transferred them to a freezer on the middeck called Glacier. And as